Yo, let's talk quarterbacks. And before we get started, I gotta lay the ground rules. This ain't about fantasy football. This ain't a pipe dream either. We gonna talk about some realistic options for the Minnesota Vikings that I feel can raise the bar within that quarterback room. Now, with that being said, I gotta also let y'all know this. These ain't names that are going to come in here and immediately start over JJ McCarthy. These are guys that I feel can bring in unique competition from veterans to players that need a little change of scenery and to some youngsters that got high upside. Y'all let me know, but we about to dive into it. Now, the first name on this list is somebody we all familiar with, Kirk Cousins. Now, I know Kirk Cousins can be a polarizing image, especially with the Minnesota Vikings. But here's some quick things that you can consider with breaking Kirk Cousins back to the Minnesota Vikings. First off, he knows the offense in the system already, and he has a relationship with the coaches on the coaching staff. Now, his availability in Atlanta, you know, it was cool, but at the same time, he lost his job to Michael Penix, but he only got that job back when Michael Penix got hurt. And he wasn't really that great when he was actually playing. We saw him make some, plays down the field that made you like, oh, that's the OG Kirk. But he's still not the same Kirk that he was before the Achilles injury. Now, bringing Kirk in, it's an instant upgrade for the quarterback room, and it brings some stability, some veteran stability. Now, the one thing that I can talk about with Kirk Cousins that's like the intangibles is his preparation, right? Kirk Cousins, he's very meticulous and he wants everything to be right. All that clenching the teeth and shit like that. Like we know that about Kirk. And that can be something that I can feel can rub off on McCarthy, right? It can rub off on McCarthy and he can have that veteran presence in the locker room when going through games. And I do understand too, because we had this same conversation last year when we was talking about who the Minnesota Vikings should bring in and pair with JJ McCarthy. And a lot of people out there, especially me, said, why would the Vikings bring in a veteran quarterback who's probably not going to play? That's just wasting a roster spot. They have a veteran quarterback presence on the roster, and that's Josh McCown. I don't think it works that way. I think I was wrong about that. I think you do need to bring in a veteran quarterback that can actually show your quarterback, something that the coaches can't. So I'm open to Kirk Cousins. I'm not saying Kirk Cousins is the fix with the situation, but I think Kirk Cousins can bring something to the table that the Vikings don't currently have, in that quarterback room. Now, let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. All right. So now the next guy is just probably my favorite guy, and Zach Wilson. Now, to me, Zach Wilson kind of parallels Sam Darnold a little bit. And I'm going to start referring to Zach Wilson as Sam Darnold 2.0. I'm not saying he has all the ability to Sam Darnold, but if you look at the careers and the trajectory, they're basically going through the same things. Highly drafted by the New York Jets, didn't pan out there. Gets traded to the Denver Broncos for a year, signs a short-term contract with the Miami Dolphins. Didn't really get things, in play there. And I understand too, like, because I want to address this right now before people get in the comments and come at me and be saying shit like, well, he couldn't even get the second string job over rookie Quinn Ewers. I think down there in Miami, they already knew what they had in Tua. In training camp, they saw what they had in Zach Wilson, and they just wanted to see what Quinn Ewers can actually go out there and do as a draft pick from the past offseason. So I don't even look at it as him not getting the nod at second string. But when we talk about Zach Wilson, here are some things that Zach Wilson could bring to the table. First off, we do have to understand that he's a reclamation project with a lot of upside. And that's something that Kevin O'Connell, I would say, he works well with. Sam Darnold, you know, Josh Dobbs, Kirk Cousins to a certain extent, pretty much a veteran quarterback that needs to tweak a little things to actually, be propped up. But this ain't a video about Kevin O'Connell. This is more about the quarterbacks, coming to the Minnesota Vikings to raise the bar in that quarterback room. Now, he has, a strong arm down the field. He can, get out the pocket and make plays. I mean, we got to understand, like he was a top 5 draft pick in his draft. So there's some things there. It just hasn't been unlocked yet, and he hasn't been consistent. And I just really feel too with Zach Wilson. I mean, he was drafted by the Jets. The Jets kind of like drafted him, didn't really work out, didn't really give him the coaching. And they brought in Rodgers, then Rodgers got hurt, and they was just like, hey, Zach, play again. And then they moved him the next offseason. And I just feel like Zach Wilson will be a quarterback that can be obtained just free agency. You don't have to make a trade for him. You don't have to give him this large contract. And in actuality, he can be a quarterback that you can actually bring and pair with another quarterback you get in the offseason. And we're gonna get into that later. But let's keep it moving and let's talk about the next quarterback on the list. Anthony Richardson. Now, I don't understand it. I I haven't seen much from Anthony Richardson, when he played for the Indianapolis Colts. I just put him on this list because I feel like Kevin O'Connell has an infatuation with Anthony Richardson. I think he feels Anthony Richardson was robbed and he was done wrong. And I think Kevin O'Connell can kind of relate because Kevin O'Connell probably feels that same way, when he got drafted. But when we talk about Anthony Richardson, I mean, what would it require for the Minnesota Vikings to obtain him? He's not an upcoming free agent. So that means the Vikings will have to trade something to get Anthony Richardson on the Minnesota Vikings. What would that be? Could it be a fifth, a sixth, or maybe a seventh round draft pick? I'm open to that as long as it's not nothing in the top 100. But you never know with the Colts because, hey, why would they trade their young quarterback, who basically they tossed to the side, but now they might need him to play, for a couple of games beginning this upcoming season because we know Daniel Jones is dealing with injuries and he's rehabbing. So I don't know what's going on there. But what we could see with Richardson, if the Colts bring in somebody, a big name or a veteran quarterback, that can basically start day one for them, then that could actually make Anthony Richardson expendable, at a later date. But the thing Anthony Richardson brings to the table is he's really athletic. He has some upside. The inconsistencies and the accuracy, he needs to get better. But this will be a project. This will be somebody you can probably stash, as quarterback 3, to see what happens. I can't see, him winning a quarterback competition over McCarthy. I can see just him like similar to Zach Wilson to where you're pairing that with McCarthy and a veteran. So that would be your 3 quarterbacks. But hey, you never know, but I'm open to it. So let's keep it moving. Now, another guy on this list is similar to Kirk Cousins, in my opinion. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo has had more success than Kirk Cousins in this league, but we got to think about where Garoppolo comes from. He, was traded to the 49ers, so he was under Kyle Shanahan, for some time. Then, he's bounced around and now he spent like 2 seasons under Sean McVay. So he would come into this team having a familiarity with the basis of the offense. And I know Kevin O'Connell's offense is different from McVay's and is different from Shanahan, but it's based on similar structures. So he would come in here knowing that. And he can also be something, like I said, with Kirk Cousins, where he can actually be a veteran presence in the locker room because I think that is needed. And with Garoppolo's resume, with him, going deep in the playoffs and playing well, with the 49ers, that can be something that he can kind of, string along with McCarthy. Just like I said before, these are not guys that I feel are going to come to this team and join this quarterback room and start over McCarthy. These are guys that are going to raise the bar. And I think it's a good fallback plan on Kirk Cousins. Like if you can't get Kirk Cousins for any reason, if Kirk Cousins decide that he doesn't want to play football anymore and he wants to go into TV, I think you should call out Jimmy G and get him on this roster. I mean, he'll be a great bridge type quarterback. I mean, it can't hurt. Like you feel me? Like it can't hurt. And I think, with him being a free agent, he probably won't ask for much, off top to come to this team. So, but the hardest part, in my opinion, will be will you be able to get him away from LA and Sean McVay? I don't know. But let's go to the next person on this list. Now, this is Carson Wentz. He's the last quarterback on this list because I feel Carson Wentz is the break glass in emergency. Now, we all know what Carson Wentz is and what Carson Wentz isn't. He played for us last season. Now, if you can't go out there and get Kirk Cousins for any reason, if you can't get, Jimmy Garoppolo, if you fall short of Anthony Richardson or whoever you're trying to target out there, if everything goes wrong and it's a complete disaster, just bring in Carson Wentz. He'll be in the second season with this team. He will actually have a training camp this year. I mean, I'm not saying this is a quarterback that I want to be, on this roster in this quarterback room next season. All I'm saying is Carson Wentz will be break glass in emergency if anything goes wrong. I mean, I still think you got to pair something else with him also. But hey, it is what it is, man. But I got a bonus one for y'all too, though, right? Because I want y'all to think about this too, because this could be something that the Minnesota Vikings could also do. Now, what about the Vikings bringing in a late round quarterback in the draft? Maybe a sixth, a seventh, maybe even a fifth. Who knows? I mean, shit, maybe they take a flyer on somebody, in the fourth round. We don't know. But the reason why I put this on there as a wild card bonus quarterback is because when we're talking about raising the quarterback bar in the room, we have to talk about the third string quarterback. We've seen multiple times in the NFL where the number one quarterback goes down, the number two quarterback goes down, and you have to lean on that third quarterback to kind of win you a couple of games. I don't, I don't. I'm trying to say this without bashing the kid. I don't believe Max Brosmer is that. I think Max Brosmer is a couple of years away from bringing a viable backup quarterback for somebody that can come in here and win a couple of games. But if you can draft a guy that can learn the system, have upside, I would have that compete with Max Brosmer. Now, mind what I said. I would have that quarterback that's drafted in the later rounds compete with Max Brosman for the third quarterback slot. I'm not asking him to be the backup. I'm not asking him to compete with McCarthy. I'm just putting quarterback competition all over the room. You get what I'm saying? That's what I want to do. And I think that's something that the Vikings should be open to. So, hey, so I'm going to close it like this, though, right? And I'm going to finish it like this. So, look, now, a lot of people out there, feel like the Vikings should go out there and get a quarterback that can start immediately over JJ McCarthy. Now, y'all know I'm a McCarthy believer. Y'all can call me a stan, whatever. I just believe that you have to give the kid a little bit more time to develop. He's only played 10 games. And I'm going to always say this. I understand the injury concerns. If he can't stay healthy, that's a tremendous problem. And if he goes into the season next year as a day one starter and he gets hurt, and some of these quarterbacks on this list play and they succeed, at that point, I'm just saying you got to roll with that. But from what I got from the press conference with Kevin O'Connell not too long ago was he wants to raise the bar in the quarterback room. And that's why I put this unique list together to kind of, give you guys something to talk about and be like, all right, cool. I can see this person coming. I can see that coming, because all these guys on this list that I talked about right now, they all bring something different. But the one thing they do bring is they're not going to be a bona fide starter over McCarthy. All these guys on the list can compete with McCarthy, and hopefully they can push McCarthy to be a better quarterback, for the foreseeable future. Now, that's all I got for y'all. Let me know what y'all think. Is there some names out there you think we should talk about? with the Minnesota Vikings and bringing them in, this quarterback room. Are the guys on my list like complete bust and we should stay away from them? If not, let me know. Get in the comments and let me know what y'all think. But thank y'all for watching. Skol.